the front of my house, and he's like, you know, I really had a great time with you. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And then he magically says, you know, I would love to take you somewhere tonight. So I'm like, where? Where do you want to take me?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to prayer meeting. Do you want to go? And I'm like, you're going to a prayer meeting
Yeah.
and you want me to? He's like, yeah, I want you to go. And I'm like, bye. I have to go. I don't have time. So God has literally preserved.
Protected you.
It's
Because
so
it's
weird.
like you are ready. Now let's do this.
I was ready to risk it all. And the way I'm fertile, I would have probably had 6 kids by then. But the Lord literally was protecting me
Right.
the whole time.
Did you like him more after that?
You know, I was indifferent because there was another circumstance where he called me, and that time I had I didn't even have menstrual cramps, but I told him that I had menstrual cramps just to see his reaction. And he goes, lay your hand on your belly and let me cast out that demon. I'm like, what? I'm expecting you to tell me you love me or it's going to be okay. You wish you were there to rub my belly. He's like, lay your hand on your belly. Let me cast that demon out.
You're like, you're being too spiritual for me right now.
Too much. So after then, I was over it. I'm like, this guy is too spiritual. It's just too
Forget
much.
this.
Forget it.
Yeah.
So we would talk on and off. Then finally, I was getting ready to go to medical school. I got accepted to medical school. And then he calls me one day, and he's like, I really want to ask for your hand in marriage. I'm like, no.
Just like that.
Just like that. I'm like, no, I'm going to medical school. This cannot happen. So I just shut it down. And then around that time, we met again. He called
Did you mean
me.
it though?
At that time, I was confused because I had just entered college, and I'm like, I'm going to medical school. I really don't even know my left from my right. But he was finishing college, so he was in that space of, I want to start a ministry. You know, he
knew he was starting a ministry.
Yeah, he knew that God had called him as well, too. Yeah. And so, you know, there was even one time way before where we tried to meet up. And I tried to bring him, if my mom is watching, hey, Mom. I tried to bring him to my house. But the Holy Spirit, literally, my mom and my dad were going all the way to Connecticut for a funeral. And we lived in Brooklyn. And that's a long distance. And they were going to a funeral. And so I told him, as soon as they leave, you can come. We can spend time in the house. You know, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was so good. I was ready to just risk it all. So again, I tell him, and he's like, okay, cool. So he's coming from the Bronx, which is like an hour away. So he gets halfway there, and he begins to call me. But for some reason, and now I know it's the Holy Spirit, said, don't pick up. Don't pick up the call. So I'm like, why shouldn't I pick up the call? So he's calling, called me about 30 times, and I did not pick up. Come to find out, within about 10 minutes, my parents turned back around, and they said that they were not going to the funeral anymore. So had they come and they saw a man in the house, my head would have been chopped off, and this interview would not be going.
You would have died that day.
That seemed, and they would have told God that I died. They would have killed me. They would have